Hey guys, Jengar here. Welcome to today's premium review in which we are taking a look at the French NC.900, which is of course a Focke-Wulf 190 A8 in disguise. It sits at 5.0 battle rating in realistic battle and 5.3 battle rating in arcade. This is the second plane you could earn in the festive event this winter, and it is quite a nice plane to earn. I like the camo a lot. It's just a pure dark green, the basic one, with the French tags on it, and yeah, I quite like it. I like its sizzle. This is a quite nice boom and zoomer, which has to be used in a very disciplined way, very focused way, because it is not very forgiving when you make a mistake. I had two matches with teams that really fell apart. I'm in a 1 versus 10 in this first match, and in the second match we'll also get outnumbered, but you guys look at that in the background while I go into the plane. The maximum speed in the plane at sea level is 528 kilometers an hour. At 4500 meters it is 468 kilometers an hour, and at 6500 meters it is 428 kilometers an hour. Now this is not very fast, this is actually slow. So in level flight this plane is slow. In a dive though, the top speed there is 868 kilometers an hour before it redlines, and somewhere above 920 kilometers an hour before it actually rips. Now I dove down in my tests from 7000 meters and I could not reach the rip speed. Now that also says something about the acceleration at the higher speeds. From about 700 kilometers and onwards the acceleration starts to slow down, and I could not reach the rip speed before I crashed into the ground. So I don't have that specific number for you, but it lies somewhere above 920. In a dive this plane is pretty fast actually. And it also has a good behavior, good control in that dive. The control stiffening starts to act up a little bit at around 600 kilometers an hour. At 700 kilometers an hour it becomes worse, and at about 770 you really start to have bad roll rate. The elevator though stays relatively functional to about 850 kilometers an hour, at which point it was still possible to pull out of a dive, which is quite nice. So the handling in the dive is good, and the top speed in that dive is also good. So, and I quite like it there, it's pretty good, but you gotta pull out quickly because it is difficult. It takes a while to regain that altitude because the climb rate is average. Though it has an air spawn, which is fantastic. The air spawn really saves this plane, as we failed to turn around this 1 versus 10, but we did our best. But the air spawn saves the plane in the beginning of the match from its average climb rate, but in the rest of the match you of course have the average climb rate, but if you dive down too low you will lose your altitude advantage, and what you don't want to do in this plane is to lose your altitude advantage. It doesn't do very well with planes above it, although it can roll very well. Of course the roll rate is fantastic, and with that you can definitely do some defensive flying and some shenanigans. With the flaps as well, the flaps rip off only at 750 kilometers an hour, and although the turn time is bad, the flaps do improve your defensive flying and turning and maneuvering, so you can definitely make somebody overshoot and kill them that way. But you don't want to get into extensive flat turns with somebody, because you will lose against most other planes with this bad turn time. Stall speed in the plane is 145 kilometers an hour, which is it's okay, I guess. Not fantastic. Firepower though is fantastic. It is really good. You have 4 20mm MG 151 cannons, which have 195 rounds per gun. I used air targets in the first match. I used stealth in the second match. Both belts are fine. The plane also has 2 13mm MG 131 machine guns with 400 rounds per gun. I also used air targets and stealth in both of those matches. 600 meter convergence is what I used, and that gives you both options in the short range and in the long range. I like it. This is my favorite convergence basically to use on pretty much every plane that has wing mounted guns, although many of the guns on this plane are also pretty centrally mounted. Fantastic firepower, really, I can't say nothing else about it. I love the MG151s. They are one of my favorite cannons in the game. The ammo load with them are excellent as well on this plane, so that is just brilliant. Acceleration in the plane is in a straight line is decent. In the dive initially it is average or decent, let's say. Then it becomes good for a while, and then at the end of the dive above 700 it becomes decent, average to decent again, because it really starts to slow down the acceleration at the higher ends of your dive again. So yeah, but in the mid section it is quite good. Energy retention in the horizontal is excellent. You really hold your speed very well. In the vertical it's decent to good, depending on which angle you are going, because the climb rate comes into part there, and the climb rate is not very good. It's average, like I said, with the air spawn saving you in the beginning. You definitely have a chance to get up to similar altitudes as your well climbing enemies that go from the airfield. Of course, you also have air spawning interceptors in the enemy team often, and they can be quite a little bit higher, but this plane really needed the air spawn, and fantastic that it has it now. Roll rate in the plane is fantastic, like I said. For defensive flying it's fantastic, and the flaps that you can put on at pretty much any speed is great as well. Rip off at 750, like I said. Maneuverability overall I would say decent, good in defensive flying, but not for extensive turn fights in the horizontal. Don't do that, it's really a waste of this plane. You will die very, very quickly. Overheating in this plane is not an issue. You can web almost indefinitely. It doesn't overheat, not even on the warmer map, so that's great. Unfortunately that I missed this shot, by the way, because if we would have taken this shot we might have won this, but yeah, I didn't take the shot. Durability in the plane is good. It can take a hit or two without problem, and you can survive some damage here and there. But yeah, if you get hit in the wrong place, of course you can lose a wing. It happens, like here. I stayed in his guns too long. I guess I had to pull off a little earlier, but yeah. Two people coming at me for a head-on quite quickly after each other. Unfortunate. We did get 5 kills though in that second match. But all in all, I really like this plane as a boom and zoomer. It has the performance in a dive, it has the top speed in a dive, and it has the finishing power to finish planes off. The thing you have to do though in this plane, and you've got to be very, very acutely aware of your altitude and where your dive began, where your dive is, and where the enemy planes around you were, because it is very difficult to regain your altitude in this plane. Now, although the energy retention in the vertical is decent, you have bad climb rate, and yeah, some planes will just stay above you if you dive too deep. So if you don't get the enemy plane you're diving after in the first initial 2 rolls or something, then just go back up, reset, and make another run on somebody else or on that target again. If they elude you too long, you don't want to keep going after the plane, because you want to regain your altitude. This plane functions very well if you have the altitude advantage, and you can dictate the fight from there in this plane. You don't want to be caught in a situation where you have to start turning, or you have planes above you and below you. It can still be done, but you have to have excellent situational awareness then, and it becomes difficult. That situation of course is difficult for most planes, but this plane is very unforgiving once it loses its edge, and you will notice that. Because it is not a fast plane, people can catch you easily if you don't hold the altitude. Yeah, it becomes a very, very problematic plane at that point. But as long as you have the altitude and you are in a situation where you can use dives on planes and use your excellent dive performance and dive speed with your excellent firepower, then you will have a blast in this plane. Plane also becomes troubled when your team dies. If your complete team pretty much dies and you find yourself, I mean every plane basically finds itself in a troubled situation in a 1 versus 10 like in that first RB match, but many planes can do better than this plane in a situation where they come from an airfield and try to take on multitudes of enemy planes because of their speed, because of their acceleration, because of their energy retention in the vertical, which this plane all needs to be handled very delicately in, because it's not the best performer at 5.0 battle rating. Like I said, that makes it an unforgiving plane, but if you're focused and disciplined, you can do a lot of good in this plane. This AB match as well was a match where we were in trouble, our team got pushed back all the time, we still got 8 kills and 4 assists and did not die in that match, so it's definitely possible to perform. We got Survivor in this match, the best squad and Terror of the Sky, 35,000 Silver Lions and almost 4,000 research points. I'll see you in a conclusion. Hey guys, so here we are after the match. Now this plane, I love the way it looks, by the way. I've always loved my Focke-Wulfs, but this thing has a very nice camo. It makes it look like a lean, mean killing machine. And it definitely is. Don't get in front of this thing. It is just horrifying, the firepower on this plane. And I always like that. I like a plane that performs very well in the dive. Boom and zooming is nice. But this plane requires discipline, like I said. You gotta be careful in it. Watch your altitude, where are the planes around you, have a situational map in your mind, and be sure to pull out of the dive in time so that you can regain your altitude position. If you do that, you can do well in this plane. If you put this plane in difficult situations, then it is not going to perform the best, because it is not a fast plane. In level flight, you will get caught by people, and it's also not the most maneuverable plane, although it has good roll rate and it can do well in defensive flying with good flaps. And like I said, fantastic roll rate. So all in all, I like this plane very much. It performed for me, and it can perform for you as well. So it's definitely worth getting it if you haven't got it yet. I think there's still a few days left on the event, I believe. Not sure. Don't quote me on that. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye. If you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Become part of this community. If you are already a subscriber, don't forget to like the video, do leave me a comment, and if you really feel like helping out today, make sure to share the video with your friends and let them know about the channel.